Hi, it's Jan Beta, and today we're going to look at keycaps for the Commodore 64 and other Commodore machines. So these are newly produced keycaps I just got a couple of days ago from CBMStuff, aka Jim Drew, who started an IndieGogo campaign in 2019. And now I finally got these. There were several problems along the way. Huge props to Jim Drew for pushing this project to its final stages because, he had to put a lot of his own money into it, and manufacturing was quite the nightmare, in fact. So today I want to do something that I wanted to do ever since I built my Sixtyclone Commodore 64 that you've seen me do several videos about now. I want to put new keycaps on this. The purpose of the whole project was to put as many newly produced components into this Commodore 64 as possible. And at that point in time, the keycaps were not quite finished. The campaign was already backed fully and production was about to start. The original delivery date was sometime in 2020, I believe, for the IndieGogo campaign. But obviously that didn't happen for various reasons. So today is the day I'm going to put these keycaps that I backed on IndieGogo on my Sixtyclone. Let me take a couple of seconds to thank the sponsor for this video, PCBWay, my favorite manufacturer of prototype PCBs of all kinds. They also do 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication, CNC machining and other things. Their pricing is super reasonable, delivery is quick and their service is great. So I highly recommend checking out the link that I put in the video description. Let's get back to the keycaps. So over the years, I built this in 2020. I got kind of used to the look of this, and it doesn't look half bad in my opinion. But I always wanted to go for a look with the clear case and dark translucent keys on this one. That was the plan from the very beginning of my Sixtyclone project, because I kind of like the look that some of the iMacs, Apple iMacs had back in the day, in the early 2000s, I believe, where they had like translucent clear plastic for the surroundings and dark translucent plastic for the keycaps. Now I have dark translucent keys. Probably not really visible that these are translucent on camera, but they look kind of grayish and they are translucent, as we're going to see. Without further ado, I think I want to take this apart to have a better grip on the keycaps and then talk about the process and also the different manufacturing processes of these keycaps. The original ones are a bit different than the new ones, but they are the same shape and should be fully compatible with the Commodore 64. There are a couple of different versions of these Commodore keyboards, some of which don't fit the new keycaps. We're going to take a look at that shortly. I also got clear function keys, which I'm not sure if they're going to look great. I should have gone with the dark translucent one. At this point you are not able to buy these from CBMStuff.com, which is the website where they are going to be available once all the IndieGogo campaign backers keycaps have been shipped. So Jim Drew has a couple more than there were backers, so there are going to be some sets of keycaps available. They are available in a number of colors. I think there are 11 colors in total. I also got another set in translucent red, which I think is a bit too much for this particular C64, but I'm going to find a use for this at a later point for sure. Yeah, this one should go with the ones that were always intended for this, I think. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to open the translucent clear case here, which is the Pixel Wizard case made from the original molds from Commodore 64C. I think they were found sometime a couple of years back in a factory in the United States and made their way to Germany, actually, where now I think Individual Computers produces these still from the original molds. So they are original Commodore 64C cases, just like the originals, but newly produced ones. You can still buy these from iComp, I believe, at this point in time. Yeah, we're going to open this up again, take the keyboard out and replace the keycaps. I believe at this point there are probably several videos about this on YouTube, but not much of an excuse, I guess. I'm still making my own video about it because I'm pretty excited about this, as you can probably tell. Waited a long time. And if you are a backer of this campaign, I think there are like 211 sets left to ship. They are shipping very soon, and you are going to get your keycap set if you back the campaign at all and put the correct address in and things like that. And we have our keyboard, which I'm going to take out all together to be able to work on this properly. And I'm going to set this aside. And I cleaned this, but it gathered some dust in the years. A bit of a wipe down should be enough to clean this. I'm not going to take this apart again. So yeah, that's the plan for today. Hope it's not too boring. I'm just going to take all these original keycaps off, give this a bit of a clean again, and put the new keycaps on, and then put it back in the case. And probably make a nice little montage with some nice music by Focus 10, which you can download or buy or stream on various streaming services and on Bandcamp, which is linked in the video description. And actually provided to me for free to use in my videos by Focus 10, which is kind of nice. So please stream away if you like the music, or download and buy. So I'm obviously using a keycap puller here to not damage the original keycaps, because these can be useful as replacements, obviously. And there's springs underneath here that we need to not lose, ideally. So I'm putting those in some containers. And yeah, not much else to say about this. Just going to do it. The spacebar is a bit of a different construction in that there's this metal clip under here, and we have to carefully get these out of these plastic clips in the keyboard. I'm using the back side of my tweezers here, which most of the time work very well for the purpose. You can also use a screwdriver carefully, or like a plastic spudger or something. But this is how this works. There's two of these wide parts in here that hold the retaining metal part, and then that metal part clips into these. And there's the spring has actually a bit more tension than the other springs. So this is the only spring that's different from all the others. As you can see, you can see the difference. These are the regular keycaps, and this is the spacebar. And it needs more force to push it together. That's the spacebar construction. Yeah, there's a bit of dust on here, but I definitely cleaned this previously, so I'm just going to dust it off and wipe it a bit with alcohol, I think. And then we're going to apply the new keycaps. I'm just going to use a brush here to dust it off, and then put some alcohol on a rag, or actually a microfiber cloth, and clean the rest of it a bit more thoroughly. Going to give this a bit of a wipe down, which usually works pretty well. And you want to be careful with all these old plastics. Let's face it, they are nearly as old as we are, or as I am for that matter. But yeah, this is brittle, very likely. These keycaps seem to be in pretty good condition actually. I've seen much worse on Commodore 64s. I guess it depends on the amount of UV light and like contaminants that these got during their life. I think we can put the new keycaps on. The keycaps actually come in 4 different little bags. This is the one with the larger keys, shift keys, return keys, space bar, which we are going to have to use the white parts from the old one and also the retaining clip. These are not included. The larger keys, except for the function keys, which have an extra bag because you can choose the color of these separately. And as I said, I went with the light clear plastic. These are the usual regular keycaps, and there's a little bag with some other keycaps, extra keycaps, because there were some printing issues that were mostly on these, the L, the O, and the equal sign. So Jim just went through each and every one of these and put some extra keys in. So yeah. We're going to replace the ones that are in here with these while we are going. And yeah, let's just take a look at these. And these are actually pretty high quality plastic, and they are exactly the shape that the old keycaps are. There are some different shapes though. There's different rows on here that have different shapes. That's something that's not really noticeable at first glance when you look at one of these keyboards. They are kind of sloped in different ways. So there's 4 rows of these, which all have a kind of a different indentation. The ones in the back are a bit higher and a bit steeper than the ones on the bottom row, for example. So I have the luxury of having several other C64s actually, so I got another one out to see where the keycaps actually go. And yeah, they are quite similar to the original ones, although I believe the font is actually slightly different on purpose. Yeah, there's a comparison. That's the new keycap, that's the original keycap. The shape of it seems to be very much the same, although these were made from scratch, basically 3D printed at first, prototyped, and then later properly modeled. And these are now injection molded, obviously from a proper keyboard manufacturing company. And as you can see on the originals, that's a different process actually. There's 2 different kinds of plastic in these actually, in the original keys, and the white, or in this case slightly yellowed plastic, is actually what you can see as the printing. And the new ones are actually pad printed with a modern process. Shouldn't wear off that quickly, but the old ones didn't. It was impossible to wear them off because it was just 2 different kinds of plastic. And what you can see is the plastic, the white plastic actually, that's injection molded in a separate process into the brown plastic. So that's a very expensive process obviously, and was not really feasible for the remade keycaps. And also it would be impossible to have clear keycaps. You can possibly see this. This is really clear, or dark, translucent. Yeah, that's visible. So yeah, these are not possible with this process, obviously. Yeah, these are sloped differently, as I said. So I'm not sure if this is the correct way of showing this. This is one of the cursor keys, and this is the clear home key from the top row. And as you can probably see, they are very different in shape. So this is sloped in this direction, and the clear home key is sloped the other way. And also this is much steeper. That's actually a common thing in basically all keyboards. Even modern keyboards have different shapes for each row of keys, so it's easier to type on, because you have kind of a slope that goes like this. As you can maybe see with my weird camera angle here as well. Another feature that is a bit special to the original Commodore keys is that they have these Petsky symbols on the front side, printed on the side of the key basically. And the new keys also have those, which makes the whole process a lot more complicated. And this is something that's definitely not common at all for modern keys. So yeah, that was kind of an adventure to get that going. Jim went all the way and had these printed, which definitely gave the keyboard manufacturing company a good time. And which also obviously added to the difficulty of producing these or having these produced, because that's not common, and these have to be lined up pretty straightly. They are not 100% straight on the original keyboards, so if these are at a slight angle, I'm not going to be worried about that, because that's kind of an unusual process, as I said. These look excellent, and even though the font is a tiny bit different to the one used on this, Commodore, I think, used different fonts over the years as well, slightly different fonts, so they are not going to look the same exactly for different generations of computers and things like that. Yeah, you can see some slight differences here on the 2 and the 3. The symbols look a bit different, but it's not going to be noticeable at all if you just look at a completely new keyboard. So you're just going to notice that it looks new and has a different color than the usual. So yeah, I'm already convinced that these are going to look glorious on my Sixtyclone. It's about time we put the new keycaps on. And then we're going to see the result. But before that, there's going to be another montage. Yeah, these do fit rather nicely. Oh! And actually the O is slightly tilted towards the right on the top there. Like, yeah. And so is the L, but it's tilted to the left slightly. And the equals is also slightly tilted. So I'm just going to use the ones that were provided as spares, which seem to be all right. Okay, that's all the letters and numbers and extra keys in there. They all fit super nicely. They feel really nice, like a bit roughed up, like the original keys basically. The texture is pretty similar. Unfortunately, don't know if you can see it, but this ad seems to protrude a bit too far. I'm not sure what's happening there. Let's take it out again. Maybe I put 2 springs under there or something. Or maybe it's the wrong shape for this key. Yeah, it appears to be the wrong shape for this row, actually. So I'm just trying to hold this in the same height as the restore key here. And yeah, it is a bit taller than the restore key, which should be exactly the same height pretty much. That's a good 2 millimeters too far up, this thing here, the @ symbol. That's kind of a bummer. But yeah, the manufacturing process had all kinds of issues, and I think CBMStuff is just going to replace this keycap without any issues. Not much I can do about that really, because even if I was to file this down, I would have to file down the inner part, I think. It's not perfect. Other than that, all the keys seem to be of the correct measurements. And I actually feel a bit sorry, but I'm going to have to write a message to Jim, I think, to have that replaced. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but other than that, everything looks as expected and they all have the correct size. The printing on the 3 keycaps I pointed out earlier was tilted for the original ones, but the replacements seem to be great. There's another thing I wanted to point out. That's, I think, where this clear unprinted button comes in. That's the keycap you can use instead of the 64 keycap here, where the original Commodore 64 has a Commodore logo, as you can see here on the original C64 I happen to have set up in the background here. And you can just use this clear one or paint your own Commodore logo or print it on there or something if you don't want the 64. But I don't mind this. This is actually the classical 64 they used, Commodore themselves used in the early campaigns. And on the early silver label Commodore 64s, this was the way the 64 was printed on the label actually. So yeah, it's pretty cool actually. I like that. Yeah, the add key is unfortunate, but as I said, this is going to be replaced with a proper one. No questions asked, I think. Let's see about the function keys. I think this is going to look pretty nice, actually. Not sure about how it's going to look in the clear case, but we're going to figure that out. Oh, and the spacebar, we're going to have to do that as well, obviously. Yeah, this actually doesn't look too bad. I'm missing one spring. Oh, I hate it when that happens. How did that happen? Did I put it in the wrong container? I was extra careful to not lose any. Where did that go? This is the spring for the spacebar. We need a spring for the function key here. Ah, every time. Actually, it doesn't happen that often to me, but I think I lost one. What's going on? I was so super careful with this. There's no spring in the other there it is! In the other container. Ah, okay. I didn't lose it, I was just disoriented. The spacebar. We're going to have to extract the metal part from the old one and put it into the new one, which should be relatively straightforward, I suppose. So I guess we can just pull these out. We don't even have to remove the metal part. And then just put them in here. And they fit perfectly, of course. Yeah, that should take care of that. And the way that this goes is with the taller side this way. Oh, we need the spring, of course. This is the most difficult part, usually. So we're putting the retaining clip here, trying to center this. I'm going to try to finagle the retaining clip in here. That clicked into place quite nicely. There we go. That does look rather cool, I think. Except for my one key that isn't the correct height, but yeah. Other than that, this feels really nice and it looks great. And it's also a bit translucent, just as I wanted. You can probably spot this here. You can see the mechanical parts in there and the springs a bit. Pretty difficult to show this on camera, but it does look rather nice in person. Yeah, let's put it in the Commodore 64 and see how it plays with that. Does look rather nice, I think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, but it's my C64, so it actually looks super clean. I like it. I would have preferred these to be dark translucent as well, but the keyboard, the rest of the keyboard, and yeah, it does look rather amazing. I think it's like kind of a very sober, clean, sleek look, which I was kind of after. Yeah, after all this time, I'm pretty happy with this. One thing that I noticed also, but that was also pointed out by Jim before he even produced the keycaps, is that the print is not very visible on these completely clear translucent keycaps. So if you know your Commodore 64 keyboard, you probably can go with this for the whole keyboard, but you should not use this color if you actually want to type and see the lettering on the keys while doing that. And just to point that out, there's not been many complaints as far as I know. I've seen a lot of people already got their keycap sets, and yeah, most of the backers at this point got their keycap sets, and there were very few complaints about keys not being printed correctly or having the incorrect size or anything like that. So I'm one of the unlucky few, I guess, with this one key not being the correct size. I have no idea how this happens actually, because probably they put them in some kind of thing to print them. So it would be pretty difficult to not see that during the process, but what do I know? These keycaps should also fit most VIC-20s, which have the same keyboard layout as the Commodore 64, and also the Commodore 16, which has the same keyboard with a slightly different matrix, but the same keycaps. But it has a different keyboard layout, so you're not going to have a lot of fun with that, I guess. If you put these keycaps on there, it doesn't make much sense, really. Unless you want to have a really flashy C16 that has different labeling on the keys than what the key actually is. So yeah, it would fit in theory, but it doesn't make sense. But for the Commodore 64, which I think is the main purpose for these keycaps and the VIC-20s, it does fit the later models, all the later models. Basically most of the models that are out there should have the key stems that are shaped like the ones you saw. There's also slightly different sizes for these, but the keycaps should fit all of those. There are, however, some very early keyboards that don't fit these, I think. They have a slightly different diameter for the little cross-shaped key stem thing where the keycap goes. The keyboards themselves are all interchangeable between systems. The connector is exactly the same, so you can put a Commodore 64 keyboard in an older VIC-20 and it's going to work no problems. If you want the new keycaps on there, you can just use a newer keyboard in an older system, and vice versa actually. So yeah, these are interchangeable, but don't interchange the Commodore 64 or VIC-20 keyboard with the Commodore 16 keyboard, because these have different pinout actually. They have the same connector, but they have a different matrix, so the circuitry is different. And you can actually short out things if you press certain key combinations, and you don't want that to happen because your old hardware should not be damaged unnecessarily. And the keyboard also works, as expected. It was a working keyboard before, so the keycaps are not going to change the functionality. But it feels nicer to the touch. So I think that's it for today. My Sixtyclone is one step closer to being made up of all new parts. Nearly there, actually. And CBMStuff actually plans on releasing a bling board, which is going to be a new keyboard for the C64 altogether. So the whole mechanism is going to be replaced, and it's going to be LED lit and things like that. That's why it's called the bling board, I think. So the only thing left to do is to say thank you very much for your support on Patreon and on Ko-fi and on the YouTube channel memberships page. The links to that are in the video description. Should you be excited to give me some support after this exciting video. I honestly hope this wasn't too boring. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jan Peter. See you next time. Bye!